मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी और माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी का भी बहुत बहुत आभार करूंगा।
माइक ऑन होगा? माइक हो गया, अब आ गया प्लीज।
तो मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी और मैं माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी का भी बहुत आभार व्यक्त करूंगा कि उन्होंने इस महत्वपूर्ण विधेयक पे बोलने का ये मौका दिया है। सभापति महोदय, आपको मालूम है कि इस वर्ष का बजट न सिर्फ हमारे देश में लेकिन पूरे विश्व में माना गया है कि ये बजट एक ऐतिहासिक और एक क्रांतिकारी बजट था। और इस क्रांतिकारी बजट में कई ऐसी योजनाएं, कई ऐसी नीतियां हैं जो बहुत ही क्रांतिकारी हैं, लेकिन मुझे कहना पड़ेगा कि आज जिस वित्तीय संस्था को अमल करने के लिए इस विधेयक के द्वारा हम लोग आज ये चर्चा कर रहे हैं, इन क्रांतिकारियों नीतियों में से मैं समझता हूं कि सर्वश्रेष्ठ ये वित्तीय संस्था होने वाली है, बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण संस्था होने वाली है। और आत्मनिर्भर भारत के लिए मैं समझता हूं ये एक मील का पत्थर साबित होने वाला है। और ये जो हम लोग संस्था इस विधेयक के द्वारा स्थापित करना चाह रहे हैं, ये दर्शाती है कि इस कोरोना काल में जो चुनौतीपूर्ण ये जो वर्ष रहा है, इस वर्ष में राहत के तो बहुत हम लोगों ने काम किए ही हैं, कदम लिए ही हैं, लेकिन इस संकट को अवसर बनाकर हम लोगों ने सुधार के भी बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण हम लोगों ने नीतियां बनाई हैं, हमने कदम लिए हैं। और आज इस नेशनल बैंक फॉर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट के लिए जो हम लोग यहां आज चर्चा कर रहे हैं, इसके द्वारा देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को जो गति मिलेगी, जो रफ्तार मिलेगा, मैं समझता हूं वो बहुत ही अद्भुत होगा और बहुत ही प्रभावशाली होगा। सभापति महोदय, आपको मालूम है कि हमें आधुनिक और विश्व स्तर के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बहुत जरूरत है। ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर जो लो कार्बन पाथवे में हमें ले जाए, इसकी भी बहुत हमें जरूरत है। और चाहे वो सड़क हो या नदी को हमें बांधना हो, चाहे वो एयरपोर्ट हो या हमें किसी नए ट्रांसमिशन लाइन को बनाना हो, चाहे वो गैस लाइन, गैस की पाइपलाइन हो या किसी विशाल पोर्ट को हमें बनाना हो, हर क्षेत्र में, अर्थव्यवस्था के हर क्षेत्र में, देश के हर क्षेत्र में हमें वर्ल्ड क्लास इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की जरूरत है। और माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी ने नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन के द्वारा जो 6000 योजनाओं को उन्हें चिन्हित किया है और जो 111 लाख करोड़ की जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की पाइपलाइन बनी है, उसकी फाइनेंसिंग के ही द्वारा हम लोग अपने देश का परिवर्तन कर सकते हैं, देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को रफ्तार हम लोग दे सकते हैं। और अगर इस नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन का हम निर्माण करें, जल्द से जल्द इसे अमल करें, तो हमारी आम जनता को इसे बहुत लाभ, सभापति महोदय, मिलने वाला है। आम जनता को हर सुविधा इसके द्वारा मिलेगी। बिजली, सड़क, पानी, मेट्रो, एयरपोर्ट, पाइप गैस, नई टाउनशिप, पूरा जो ईज ऑफ लिविंग जो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी की सोच है, उनका जो मूल मंत्र है, वो इस इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के द्वारा हम लोग खड़ा कर पाएंगे। और अगर हम अपनी कंपनियों की ओर भी देखें, उन पे पैनी नजर लगाएं, तो उनको इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के द्वारा, विश्व स्तर के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के द्वारा भी बहुत लाभ मिलता है, क्योंकि उनके कॉस्ट कम होते हैं, बिजली का कॉस्ट कम होता है, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन का कॉस्ट कम होता है, लॉजिस्टिक्स का कॉस्ट कम होता है, उनका कंपेटिटिवनेस बढ़ता है। जब उनका कंपेटिटिवनेस बढ़ता है माननीय सदस्यों, तो उनके एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ते हैं, और जब एक्सपोर्ट्स बढ़ते हैं तो रोजगार का भी काफी तेजी से सृजन होता है। तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में यहां भी हमें बहुत लाभ मिलता है। और हमें यह नहीं भूलना चाहिए, जब हम खतरों से घिरे हुए हैं, जब हमारे सीमाओं पर खतरे हैं, तो जो बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का भी हम लोग इसके द्वारा निर्माण कर सकते हैं, सड़कों का निर्माण कर सकते हैं, हम लोग एयरपोर्ट का निर्माण कर सकते हैं, ऊर्जा हम लोग पहुंचा सकते हैं, टेलीकॉम का टावर हम लोग पहुंचा सकते हैं। तो बॉर्डर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के द्वारा नेशनल सिक्योरिटी पे भी इसका बहुत अहम प्रभाव, सभापति महोदय, जरूर होगा। और जब ये बड़े पैमाने पे बहुत विस्तार हमारे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में आएगा, तो रोजगार भी बहुत तेजी से बढ़ेगा, रोजगार का भी सृजन होगा, लोगों को अच्छी अच्छी नौकरियां मिलेंगी, और जब अच्छी अच्छी नौकरियां मिलेंगी तो वो खर्चे भी करेंगे, खर्चे करेंगे तो और निवेश की जरूरत होगी। और जो माननीय वित्त मंत्री जी ने कहा है कई बार इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में भी लिखा गया है कि एक वर्चुअस इन्वेस्टमेंट साइकिल होगा और हम लोग इस तरीके से एक नए भारत का, एक आत्मनिर्भर भारत का हम निर्माण कर सकेंगे। और विशेष मैं पूरे सदन का ध्यान इस पर आकर्षित कराना चाहता हूं सभापति महोदय कि आगे के समय जो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग का जो हमारे यहां खतरा बढ़ता चला जा रहा है, पूरे विश्व के सामने ये जो खतरा है, और अगर ग्लोबल पैंडेमिक से हम लोग प्रभावित हुए हैं तो क्लाइमेट चेंज से और भी ज्यादा प्रभावित होंगे। इसलिए हम लोगों को जल्द से जल्द जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तैयार करना है वो लो कार्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, जीरो कार्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो, और उसके लिए भी लोगों का अनुमान है कि $100 बिलियन a ईयर हम लोगों को ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए खर्चा करना है। इस तरीके से ही हम गेटिंग टू द ग्रीन फ्रंटियर, जो हमें ग्रीन फ्रंटियर ऑफ जीरो कार्बन जो हमें पहुंचना पड़ेगा, जल्द से जल्द पूरे विश्व को पहुंचना पड़ेगा, इसके लिए भी ये जो DFI हम लोग स्थापित कर रहे हैं बहुत ही अहम होने वाली है। नाउ लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई द डिजाइन एंड द थिंकिंग बिहाइंड दिस नेशनल बैंक फॉर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर development is so bold and so innovative. There are three aspects to it, Honorable Chairperson Sir, that I really think we should consider. Number one, this is not just a bank. We are actually creating an architect of an entire financing ecosystem, and I will draw your attention to that. Number two, as my friend from the Congress was saying earlier, we are trying to create a professional institution, an institution that will attract the best talent, that will be run on a professional basis and be able to provide the most innovative and lowest cost financing solutions for our infrastructure. And finally, honorable members, the scale at which this bank is going to operate, the vast financing capacity that it will deliver is truly going to be significant for our country. That too is part of the design, and I want to highlight that as well. Again, I'll come back to the requirement that we have of 101 lakh crores. If we are going to require 101 lakh crores for our infrastructure, of which maybe 20-30%, some small fraction of that is going to be done on a commercial basis. The vast majority of it, 70-80 lakh crores, is going to have to be financed either through the budgets of the central government or the state budgets, which are of course constrained in many ways because we have significant social spending, significant payroll spending that we have to do. So a large portion of this is going to have to be financed through the capital markets. Maybe 40, 50, 60 lakh crores is going to have to be financed on a market basis. And for that, if indeed we are able to scale up this bank for infrastructure financing and development, this bank, and I was saying that it is going to have a very vast financing capacity, is probably going to be carrying a loan book of some 20-30 lakh crores eventually, which will put it at a scale of where the largest banks of this country, like a State Bank of India, are. So this is an institution of very vast financing capacity that is being created through this very, very important bill that we are debating and we are considering today. And in fact, if you will see in the bill, we are saying that we will provide 20,000 crores of immediate capitalization, and it has an authorized share capital of 1 lakh crores. At 1 lakh crores at a 10x gearing, we are already talking about 10 lakh crores of financing that can be made available over the next few years. So this is a vast undertaking. This is a very important undertaking for the country. But I'll come to the first point, which is that this bank is going to be an ecosystem architect. And let me just read out something from the statement of objects and reasons, because I think that is very central to the description of this vast financial institution. The statement of objects and reasons says, and I'm quoting, overall the institution shall provide a supporting technology-enabled ecosystem across the life cycle of infrastructure projects as a provider, enabler and catalyst for sustainable infrastructure financing in India with the backing of the government. This is an institution that will really create a financing ecosystem. It will provide loans, it will raise money, it will be an underwriter. It will make markets for bonds, derivatives and other important instruments that are required to be able to create broad and deep capital markets for infrastructure financing, where the requirement is vast, as I've just said. And it will also provide project structuring and monitoring services, technical assistance and drive innovation. This is the design of this infrastructure bank, where it will be truly an ecosystem architect. At the same time, what is clearly laid out in the bill is that this is a bank that will be set up to provide the most competitive and innovative solutions. Solutions that are affordable, solutions that enable us to build infrastructure as cheaply as possible. This bank is going to be helmed by a chairperson who will be appointed by the central government, but then thereafter, the appointments are going to come through the NRC, the Nominating and Remuneration Committee of this institution itself. So the appointments are going to be made professionally through the Bureau as well as the NRC, and these will be professionals, these will be world-class institution builders who know exactly how to come up with these innovative financing solutions. We will give the professional autonomy that this institution requires. And we have also made ample provision that this institution will operate on a purely commercial basis, free of the interference and the bureaucratic meddling that we have seen in institutions that have been created in the past. There are important clauses in the bill that support this, which I will highlight later on. The other important factor here is it is said that the managing director and the deputy managing directors will get market salaries. They will be paid what's required to attract world-class talent. And very, very importantly, something that is clearly mentioned in the bill is that over time, progressively, the government will reduce its equity in this financing institution from 100%, which is how it will be initiated, right down to 26% over a period of time, making this an independent, broadly held, very, very capable professional institution. This is by design in this bill, and I would really request the House to note that we are creating an institution that is very innovative and has only been done once before, to the best of my knowledge, and that was when we created the National Infrastructure Investment Fund, the NIF. So this massive financing capacity that is being created through this initial capitalization of 20,000 crores, which will, as I said, immediately support through a 10x gearing of about 2 lakh crores. But as you build up the share capital, as the government progressively dilutes its shareholding, it will be able to support up to 10 lakh crores of financing capacity, which will really accelerate, really speed up the development of our national infrastructure pipeline. The thinking also here is, as the Honorable Finance Minister has said in some of our public comments, is that over time we will attract other very sophisticated, very well-known, world-class investors as shareholders in this institution, and progressively, as we dilute down to 26%, we may get sovereign wealth funds and other world-class institutional investors also to provide their world-class expertise and their innovations to be part of this institution as well. And another very important aspect of this bill is that there is an enabling provision that will over time allow private sector DFIs also to get created. DFIs that are 100% going to be owned in the private sector, but will obviously be subject to the regulation and the supervision of the Reserve Bank of India. These are important aspects of this bill that need to be considered and need to be commended in terms of what the Honorable Finance Minister has done for the design of this bill. But let's step back. Let's ask ourselves, why has it been so difficult for us in our country to finance infrastructure? And why is it that when the public sector banks sought to finance this infrastructure during the time of the UPA government, that they ran into so much trouble with NPAs? And that the other development finance institutions of the past have not been successful in really scaling up and being successful. To do that, we have to understand the nature of infrastructure financing itself, Honorable Chairperson Sir. Now, when we are looking at infrastructure, we are building long-lasting assets. When we build an airport, when we build a bridge, when we build a highway, a power plant, these are assets that are going to be on the ground for 30, 40, 50 years. They need to be financed over a similar long-term period because we will be using them for 30 to 50 years. Therefore, to avoid an asset-liability mismatch, we need financing also, liabilities also, that are going to be 30, 50-year liabilities to match the cash flows that are generated from these long-lasting assets. These cash flows do take time to ramp up. It does take time for these assets to get to maturity, to be able to get to the full cash flow that is required to service this kind of debt. And for some period of time, maybe the cash flows are not sufficient to be able to cover their full debt. Now, there is already one innovation that the government has brought in, which is increasingly being used, which is the hybrid annuity model, where the government provides grant money for some part of these infrastructure assets, Honorable Chairperson, sir, but the remainder does have to be financed through bonds, through long-dated liabilities. Now, banks find this difficult. Our public sector banks, our private sector banks have found it difficult to generate these long-dated liabilities. And why is that? Because we have to understand, honorable members, that the deposit taking that commercial banks do, that scheduled commercial banks do, the deposit taking that they do, when an average saver, when you and I go and deposit our money in a bank, typically the deposits that we do are short-term deposits. In fact, if you look at the RBI data, you will find that more than 90% of the deposits that we have given are short duration deposits. That means that they mature in 3 years or less. So I'm giving the bank 6-month money, 1-year money, 2-year money, 3-year money, and what the bank has to do is then lend for 30 to 50-year assets. Now, in the financial world, this is called maturity transformation. And this is a very vital aspect of intermediation, where banks have to do this kind of maturity transformation. But that is very difficult to do when we are looking at a 101 lakh crores. This kind of maturity transformation for our public sector banks hasn't worked very well. So we have to develop long-dated liabilities. We have to find a way in which we can also deepen and strengthen our markets for 30-year bonds. And if we have to do that and deepen these capital markets, not only are the basic financial instruments, the bonds, going to have to be developed, there are associated a number of other financial instruments, derivative contracts, hedging contracts that also have to be created. For example, suppose I were to take a loan in dollars for 30 years. I am getting all of my revenues in rupees, but I have to service now this dollar loan of 30 years. For 30 years, I have to service it in rupees. That means I'm taking a tremendous exposure in my rupee-dollar financing. And today, if I have to hedge that, today if I have to buy dollars with my rupees, all I can do is get very short-dated hedging contracts that are 6 months, 1 year, at best 2 years. So how do I hedge myself against a movement of the rupee against the dollar over 30 years? Unless I create long-dated hedging contracts, long-dated instruments, that's simply not possible. And that's why I said right at the outset, this financial institution is intended to be an ecosystem architect, to create the financing instruments, the hedging contracts, the derivative instruments that will enable us not only to foster a broad, deep, liquid market in long-dated paper, long maturity paper, but also to create the associated and affiliated derivative instruments that will support this deep, liquid market. That's what this financing institution is designed to do. And again, I'll commend the Honorable Finance Minister and her team for thinking it through in this very broad and expansive way so that we genuinely solve the problems. If we solve the problem only in a half-hearted or an incomplete way, again we have to come back and fix it. But time is of the essence. Whether it is the infrastructure we have to build, whether it is the low-carbon pathways that we have to get onto, and whether it is to satisfy the needs and demands of our people, time is of the essence. As the Honorable Prime Minister says, by 2047 we want to build a developed nation. We want to get to $5–10 trillion of our GDP. So time is of the essence, and that's why this design is a comprehensive and complete design. Every aspect has been worked out, which is why this company is a unique comprehensive ecosystem architect. Now, many DFIs in the past have come. We've had IDBI, we've had ICICI, we had IIFC, we've had NABARD, we've had SIDBI, we've had NHP. None of them have been able to build it up because they had faced certain challenges which have been solved through this bill. One is that they could not raise capital, 30-year liabilities at a low enough cost. And so it proved difficult for them to compete, and so they were not able to provide this kind of financing. They did not have the best talent available. They didn't have the sophisticated expertise to really do the project financing, the assessment of what was required to hedge their risks. And because they were operating in a very bureaucratic way, they were not able to attract the best talent, they could not succeed. And then they also did not build sufficient expertise in project finance, all of which is addressed through this bill. And as a result of that, the Narasimhan committee suggested that they either get converted into commercial banks or in fact they become NBFCs. ICICI and IDFC are today commercial banks. They stop becoming development finance institutions, and IIFC, of course, has become an NBFC. But let's look around the world, honorable members. If we look at other countries, and our neighbor, China, has done extremely well by utilizing these DFIs to accelerate its investment in infrastructure. Brazil, Germany, Japan, South Korea, all of these countries have utilized DFIs to accelerate infrastructure financing and grow very, very quickly. We know that China's growth has largely been investment-led. I'm sure many honorable members here have been to China. They've seen the scale and scope of their infrastructure build-out, much of which has been financed through DFIs, through mobilization of domestic savings, through these long-dated liabilities to build these world-class assets. And these DFIs have got quasi-sovereign status and significant tax concessions to mobilize domestic savings. And these are the design elements that have also been taken into account for this financing institution as well. It is a statutory institution. Honorable members, very important to recognize that. This is an institution that is being created by an act of parliament like State Bank of India was. It's a statutory institution that effectively reports back to parliament through our standing committees and is accountable that way. It is the principal institution for development finance. That is, it's going to be the ecosystem architect. It has as its objectives not just financial objectives, not just financial return, but also development, which is why it will provide the technical assistance, the project monitoring, the compliance, and so on. And of course, whether we look at it in terms of financing features that are built into the bill, regulation, governance, and interference, all of these are included in the design of this bill. Let me first turn to the financing aspect, because this is the core of what is required. If this institution is unable to acquire funds at a sufficiently low rate, at a sufficiently affordable rate, and then lend it on to borrowers, we will not be able to build the infrastructure as fast and as affordably as we would like. If, for example, I have to pay 15, 20%, 12%, 13% rates that are that high for infrastructure, the hurdle rates will be so high that much less of the infrastructure will get built. So low cost lending is the key, affordable lending is the key. Here there are 2 or 3 elements that are very important, and I'd like to draw this august House attention to that. First, that when we are acquiring funds from foreign sources, the sovereign guarantee, which means that the government of India will stand behind this DFI, that sovereign guarantee is available at a very concessional rate of 0.1%. Typically, when other institutions go out and ask for a sovereign guarantee for their foreign borrowings, other government-held institutions, they are paying 1.2%. This institution will pay 0.1%. So it's saving 1.1%, 110 basis points, that flows through in the cost of lending or in the lending rates that they will then have. In addition, the hedging costs will also be provided for by the government. As I said, hedging costs are expensive, and this too will be a big concession that the government of India is giving, again, which means that lending rates will come down. Now, rather than distort the market for corporate bonds by giving it a tax-free status, what the government has correctly done is provide effectively an interest subvention of 5,000 crores. An interest subvention of 5,000 crores that will enable you to provide rates that are competitive, but not require the rates at which you lend at to reflect that as well. And so, the sense is that with the 5,000 crores that you have, you can lend out 75,000 crores, and of course more money can be provided as required. So 75,000 crores can be lent at low rates because of that, and the income tax exemption that this DFI is going to get for 10 years reduces the net interest margin that is required to lend further. So again, this is a way in which you can bring down lending rates. And then finally, another way to bring down lending rates is to enable this DFI to borrow directly from the RBI. That, in fact, is also there. It's in clause 17, items 22 and 23. If you see that, it says that you can borrow directly from the RBI as well, which again will reduce the cost of borrowing and will reduce your lending rates as well. And therefore, the advantages that are built into the bill and the policy announcements that the Honorable Finance Minister, the Government of India has made, clearly indicate that this DFI is going to be able to get funds at a far lower rate than the DFIs of the past. That will of course be passed through to borrowers, and therefore our infrastructure is going to be built faster and quicker. Of course, there are important elements in Chapter 4 on market making, that is also very, very important, and on Chapter 3 in governance, where, as I said earlier, the board is going to be independent, the board is going to be autonomous, there's going to be a 5-year review through an RBI appointed auditor, the MD can be removed for non-performance, and this is independent functioning professional institution that is protected by undue interference from investigative authorities. This is not a place where people have lifetime sinecures, they have to prove themselves every day. And of course, as I said, the regulations associated with this DFI are through the RBI, so it is going to be governed by the RBI Act and the Banking Act as well, and these are laid out in clauses 34 and 35. इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में सभापति महोदय, इस संस्था के द्वारा एक क्रांति आने वाली है। देश भर में जो सड़कों की जरूरत है, पोर्ट्स की जरूरत है, पावर प्लांट की जरूरत है, जो हवाई अड्डों की जरूरत है, उन सबको ये संस्था पूरे करने वाली है। मैं झारखंड की सरकार से भी बहुत विनम्रता से निवेदन करूंगा कि हजारीबाग का जो एयरपोर्ट जो आपको बनाना था, उसके लिए भी आप, अगर आपको जरूरत हो तो इस संस्था से आप लोन लेकर हमारा हजारीबाग का एयरपोर्ट भी बनवा दीजिए, ये भी बहुत जरूरी है। अंत में सभापति महोदय, मैं बस सिर्फ यही कहना चाहूंगा, रामधारी सिंह दिनकर जी की कुछ पंक्तियां हैं, मानव जब जोर लगाता है, पत्थर से पानी बन जाता है, लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री जी और वित्त मंत्री जी जब जोर लगाते हैं तो देश का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर तेजी से बन जाता है। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सभापति।
श्री गजानन कीर्तिकर जी।